Welcome back to Everyday Economics, a podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, president of the 501c3 nonprofit Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics, a production of America's Talking Network. You can check out all of our great podcasts at americastalking.com. We're recording this episode on Monday, February 27th. And joining me, as always, is my friend and colleague, Dr. Orphe Divounguy. Dr. O, the debate rages whether or not a recession is coming, whether or not we've already been in a recession. It's been called a technical recession. Then it was called not a recession at all. Certainly the lingering of this economic uncertainty and the increase in prices and what we're starting to see in the job market. People are starting to get edgy, and they should be. Because these aren't normal times. This is not what you're accustomed to, unless you grew up during the 70s or was a fully fledged adult in the 70s. Maybe you skipped out on what happened in the late 1990s as well. This might be new territory for you. Let's talk about how people get through this, whatever this is. We don't even really feel like I have to put a name on what this is, but clearly prices are up. Cost of everything just seems to be just continuing to expand. We're seeing some downturn in the job market. Housing is just one giant question mark week after week after week. How do people get through this? How do you make sense of this?
Well, first, prices are high and the Fed is going to bring inflation to its knees. And so, and what that means is basically they're going to continue raising interest rates. We had some January data that came in showing a stronger labor market than expected, showing that wage growth was still quite high. And of course, the worry is that if wage growth is high, people are going to be spending a ton of that increase, which is going to fuel inflation or partly fuel inflation. Some of the inflation data actually suggests that there's still some supply chain issues that are not completely resolved. The Fed's looking at CPI this month, and CPI also came in higher than expected. The PCE price index also ticked up much more than expected. There's still a lot of spending out there. I, for one, believe that consumers are just treading water and that the labor market is actually providing them a little bit of breathing room to stay above water. But that's not going to be enough. I expect the Fed to continue to raise interest rates. I think the market expects the Fed to raise interest rates by at least another 75 basis points in the next couple of meetings. So what does it mean for the average person? For the average person, it means, you're facing high prices everywhere you turn. And at the same time, you're facing interest rates on your credit cards tick up, and your credit card balance it's like you're making those payments, but they're not going down, right? You're struggling to make the minimum payments. I hear you out there. I'm sure there's a lot of our listeners that are really struggling through this. And I guess our duty here on the podcast is to help them. There's no point in talking about the economy if we're not helping our people. And so I want to help. We're not going to tell you how to invest. It's going to be a different episode. We're not going to tell you how to invest your money. We're going to give you some good advice that I personally practice.
Well, let's get into that. This is not financial advice. Orphe is not a fiduciary, nor am I. But, in this circumstance, what are some things that you can do to get yourself squared up?
The first thing is know what it is that you can afford, right? Create a budget. What's coming in, what's going out. You got to know everything, man. If you don't track this stuff, it runs away from you. So you got to create a budget. Spend only on essentials is, I think, the best advice I can give people out there. Stuff that I do, by the way. Okay, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I'm doing. Learn to cook, man. Just, learn to cook. Prices of food away from home are rising faster than grocery prices. Okay, so learn to cook. You look at the CPI data and you can see it month over month. Prices of food away from home, restaurants, hotels are rising faster than grocery prices. Eliminate debt. Eliminate debt as fast as you can. If interest rate on your debt is rising really rapidly, you have to try to eliminate the debt. Now, I understand that because you're squeezed right now, it's going to be very hard to do that. So there's a couple of credit cards out there, and you can look it up. There's a couple of credit cards out there with 0% interest on balance transfers for up to 18 months. 0% interest on balance transfer. It means you can consolidate all those bad credit cards that you have with high interest on them, and you can stick them all into one credit card with 0% interest, which will give you a little breathing room, right? You're going to be paying that off, and it's going to go down faster than if you have to pay, $200-$300 in interest every month, maybe even more for some people.
It does give you a chance also to reset and to implement some of the other things. I don't think you're offering this like it's an a la carte menu. These are simpler things, but if you took the time to do them, if you planned, if you actually created a budget, if you not only cooked your own food, but shopped for yourself. I mean, how many people are paying a third party to go gather their groceries for them? I mean, this is not the Jetsons. Also, I love the entrepreneur and love the entrepreneurial ideas of convenience services. I think they're great. But if you're living on those convenience services, you got to ask yourself why. What's going on that you're so busy that you can't go to a grocery store or that you can't cook your own meals?
Especially if you've got laid off lately, right? We've seen over 250,000 people get laid off recently in the tech sector, the mortgage industry. I mean, you got to just take control of your stuff now. It's that time. The other thing I think I would say is if you haven't gotten laid off yet, fingers crossed, you're not going to get laid off. Make yourself indispensable at work. This is the time to exhibit an outward mindset, to say, hey, let me pay attention to what people need. Let me go and change my behavior to help them accomplish their goals and objectives, right? And let me measure my progress at doing that. If you're successful at solving problems for your boss, I promise you he'll keep you around. And so I think that it's that time where you make yourself indispensable at work. And if you don't think you want to stay at that particular job or you don't like that particular boss, then switch jobs, look for one, right? When you have a job is the best time to look for another job.
On behalf of bosses everywhere, I can tell you that would be mutually beneficial.
Absolutely. You always have to have options. Options is the key here. It's about bargaining power, right? And so, research shows that people who switch jobs every 2 years or so end up earning 50% more over their lifetime. Job switchers during the pandemic are the ones that saw the wage increases and the massive income increases. Job stayers did not. And so that's just a fact, right? So that's why we had this whole, what did the people call in the media? The whole quitting thing.
Quiet quitting, brother.
Right? Quiet quitting. There we go. Right. So people were quitting because they were getting better offers.
It's funny. You don't hear about quiet quitting so much anymore. And that was, I believe that was terminology that came out of the tech sector, that the idea of quiet quitting during remote work in particular. Yeah, it's not a good time to try to be a quiet quitter because you'll be loudly fired.
Ultimately, I think the labor market is slowing down, which is why I said, this inflation is on their way. I'm not so worried so much about the latest inflation reports because I think the labor market is cooling, which is why you should take those steps. The labor market's cooling. There's going to be fewer options available, and you should take those steps to get your finances in order. I would say also never been a better time for a side hustle, right? A lot of people just finish work at, 4, 6 p.m. and then watch TV, right? There's never been a better time for a side. If you got that extra couple hours every day, do something else with it. Start a business, it's so easy nowadays to start a business. A side hustle. But also don't lock in your losses. Don't cash out on some of those long-term investments. We had that report from Warren Buffett came out with his report. And the bottom line is, he says, look, here's the best way to invest. Invest in companies and managers. It's not about following the cool thing, right? The coolest, latest thing. It's about investing in good, strong companies over the long term and good managers. At the end of the day, don't fight the Fed. And don't fight the Fed for a household means, save as much cash as possible. Get yourself an emergency fund, eliminate debt, watch what it is that you're spending your money on, eliminate non-essential items, make yourself helpful and indispensable at work, and get that side hustle.
I appreciate all those insights. For Dr. Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.